easy too. It's just yeah, the tech stuff, dude. I start to panic and then I don't even know what the hell I'm doing. But
Well,
not
no,
to put that in your head. You see, you're good.
no panicking today. Might be live already, and we are. All right, let me transition. Just make sure here. All right, fellas, we're back. Welcome to the Occupy Fantasy Channel. The first day of the 2024-2025 NBA season is here. It's been a long off season. I guess not really, but we've had a lot of stuff to keep us occupied. Nick, I know you were working on baseball, some UFC stuff, but I mean, how excited are we to be back for NBA? How are you doing?
Excited, man. Love it. I mean, it's definitely a grind, but definitely one of the most fun DFS sports for sure. I mean, always an edge if you're paying attention to the news. Only two games tonight to break down, so kind of like a nice, I don't know, dip your toe in the water type slate we have here. But yeah, I mean, we're gonna hit the ground running. Got some huge contests tonight. Guaranteed overlay, I think, on FanDuel, which is filled unfortunately, but a lot to like across the industry. And if you're in the sports betting states, definitely check for boosts and things like that. Um, yeah, it's a holiday today, man. First day of the year.
I mean, the first day of the NBA season is always fun because it's a two-game slate. The contests are gigantic, and we always see some weird kind of lineup winning every year, right? And so I think the big
Yep.
question, we're just going to get right into it, guys. I think the big question is what do we do to kind of get a little bit different from the field while not sacrificing, the upside of our lineups? And so we have four games tonight. We got Lakers in Minnesota as the night game. New York and Boston is the opening game. It's a pretty good game. And so, just looking at the model, at the top of the model, I mean, what do we want to start off talking about? What stands out the most to you?
I mean, I don't know. AD's at the top of the model as I think he should be, honestly. More expensive than a lot of the other pay ups, but we're seeing him a little bit lower owned. I think that's a place I'm happy to get different. Obviously, not your preferred matchup here against Gobert. But yeah, man, I mean, AD, if we can get different by playing the top OF play on the slate, we always say this. That's usually a good way to go. I mean, I think today it's easier to get different with your pay ups than it is the value. Like Miles McBride's going to be chalk. We're going to talk about Nas Reed later. The model doesn't love him, but I think he's one of the easier clicks here as well. But yeah, we're going to see kind of flat ownership among some of these top plays, and I think that's really the only way to get different. Whenever you have Boston on a slate, it gets a little bit tricky. Obviously, Tatum, Brown, White, Holiday, they can all go off on a given night. Probably two of those four have a really good game, but you're kind of playing that game of roulette guessing which ones it's going to be. So I'd say whoever's low owned of that Boston Big Four. I really like AD as a way to get different here. And then as much as I like Cat here, I mean, I don't know, over 50% on both sites, first game with the new team. On pause, but at the same time, I mean, he does feel too cheap. But yeah, man, I mean, a lot to like at the top, and some guys certainly lower owned than maybe they should be for a two gamer.
Yeah, man, Cat's that first guy I looked at. Like, that's probably my favorite play on the slate, but he's also the
Yeah, I
highest
mean,
owned player on the slate after McBride. So we're going to have to make some decisions there. Roth in the chat let us know the audio is a little lower. We're trying a new setup this year, so let us know that everything's all good. I think it's better now.
yeah, I don't know how to
Um,
raise it. I'd be happy to if I could.
and
Um,
Jose, good to see you again. We'll get into the LA,
hey,
Minnesota in a minute. What happened? Did we end our broadcast? It's a little scary to see the first time running a new streaming software. Let me just make sure that we're
do
still.
not. Uh-oh. Oh, audio sounds good.
No, I think we're still live. Uh, yeah, I think we're
No,
still
yeah,
good.
yeah, we're good. We're good.
Okay.
Yeah, whoever that is, maybe just refresh. Um, yeah, we're back.
And anyone here, if you have any questions, want to hear about a specific, or want to hear us talk about something specific, go ahead and throw that in the chat. We're here for DraftKings, FanDuel, underdog stuff, pick'ems, whatever you guys need. We cut out, but we're
Yes,
good
sir.
now. All right. Well, we're gonna proceed on like you know, hopefully this goes smoothly. But so you just named a lot of the good players. Do we want to look at how do we want to do this? Do we want to do position by position?
I mean, it's a two gamer. I feel like we could almost go team by team,
Let's go team by team.
and then kind of go back to the position when we build, if we build.
So let's start with
But
Boston and New York since that's the first game.
yep,
All right. So Tatum, Brown. Derek White. I mean, the first thing that stands out is the ownership difference between Tatum and Brown. I mean, immediately I just kind of want to be over on Brown and under on Tatum.
Yep, totally agree. And I mean, we go back to the NBA Finals. Brown was the MVP. I mean, yeah, it's become more of a conversation. Which of these guys is the guy in Boston? And obviously, off-court intangibles only matter so much in what we're doing with DFS. But Brown is the vocal leader of that team, and obviously Tatum. I mean, over the course of a season, is probably going to be the better producer. But night to night, there's definitely some variance there. So I'm with you, man. Especially on DK, where you're less than half the ownership on Jaylen Brown. That seems a little bit dramatic to me. A bit tighter on FanDuel, where they're only 17% or so apart, but very clear and obvious way to get different. Obviously, the model does favor Tatum slightly, but I think the ownership gap is kind of wider than that gap we're seeing in OF Index. So, yeah, good way to get different right off the bat is probably go a little bit heavier on Jaylen, a little bit lighter on Tatum.
And I mean, Tatum is going to outscore Brown in more games than Brown outscores Tatum this season. But I
For
just see
sure.
this ownership difference. It's not that large of a difference. And then I mean, looking at everyone else on this list, Derek White, Drew Holiday, Al Horford are the other starters. What do you like the most from here?
I mean, it's got to be White, I think. You look at the Knicks, obviously one of the best defensive teams in the NBA now. They do have Cat coming in. But yeah, I mean, OJ, Mikal Bridges, while he can't shoot, still a great defender. Josh Hart in there as well. Really good defensive team, but that definitely kind of favors their front court defense. So I think if there were a matchup to be exploited, probably comes in the backcourt. Drew, not the same type of usage player we've seen. Um, Earlier in his career or with different teams in different situations. Derek White, we've seen time and time again kind of go off for big scores. So I like White here a lot. He is kind of drawing a lot of like, ownership, though. I mean, we could almost have the same conversation that we did Tatum to Brown with White and Holiday. I'm a little bit less eager to make that pivot, though, on ownership. So I will say Derek White, maybe my favorite Celtic overall tonight, all things considered. I just trust the minutes. And I really do prefer the matchup for him there than I do some of these other guys in the front court. I just think he's going to be shooting. He's going to get his open looks. Um, but yeah, I mean, definitely popular. It's not like you're getting super different going there.
We are getting a couple more comments about the audio. I have everything turned up to the max settings, and so I'm sorry. I don't think there's anything else I can do for this stream, but I'll take a look at it after and see what we can do. Okay, and the live actually did end this time. No, it didn't. Okay, I think I kind of see the issue some people are having. It just showed it ending on my screen, but we are still live. So I like those
Hmm.
pivots. Yeah, I'm gonna go with Derek White over Drew Holiday, and then Peyton Pritchard at 23%. We'll talk about him more versus Miles McBride when we get to the Knicks. And then I'm sorry, I kind of missed what you were talking about, but did you mention Luke Cornett versus Tillman?
Not yet. No, I didn't get quite down that low yet. I was just saying I think the matchup for Derek White's more favorable than it is for Tatum and Brown, just because he's going to be seeing a lot of Brunson. Um, But yeah, I mean, we do have to kind of decide who's going to be the backup center there. Porzingis being out probably bumps the usage for all of these starters, but it's also going to make someone like Cornette or Xavier Tillman relevant as a value play. It seems more likely than not that it's going to be Cornette. We're seeing that reflected in the ownership, but he is pretty low owned compared to some of the other value plays on this slate. So, pretty comfortable getting to Cornette. I would maybe mix in some Tillman. Wouldn't have him in any lineups with Cornette. It would take me a lot to get there, though. Like, if you're someone who 150 maxes, I could see mixing in Tillman. For me, maybe I get to Cornette. Not really jumping at either, but definitely some opportunity there with Porzingis out of the lineup.
Yeah, and I think these are guys we mostly want to focus on for larger field tournaments. In the smaller fields, we probably don't have to get this deep. Let's go ahead and take a look at the Knicks. So I mentioned Peyton Pritchard versus Miles McBride. Miles McBride is 70% owned, and I'm sure a lot of lineups are still going to have both of these players, but we're getting a pretty decent price discount on Miles McBride. We have him projected for 25 minutes, which is pretty significant. So I think he deserves to be the best value play on this slate. How are you approaching him? Are you looking at locking him or being under the field?
No, I'd be over. He's coming off the bench, but he's going to run that second unit. He's kind of filling in that quickly role that we saw with the Knicks last year when he was going off before he was traded to Toronto. Really talented player, Deuce McBride. I really liked him, what he's been able to do with this team. And just knowing he's coming in with that second unit, you're going to see a nice little spike in usage. We have him for 25 minutes. I actually think that's kind of on the conservative end with some of the bodies that the New York Knicks are missing right now. Wouldn't be surprised to see him push 28, even get closer to 30, kind of depending on if he has a hot hand or the like. But yeah, I really like McBride here. I know he's chalk, but if there were a free square, I think he's about as close as you could get. You mentioned Pritchard as maybe a pivot. I'd be comfortable playing both in the same lineup. I just think it's a very, very risky move to make. Like if you're playing Pritchard, you're already getting different. I don't know that you need to fade McBride to kind of do that type of thing. So for me personally, love McBride. One of my core plays tonight, regardless of format, regardless of site. And I'm fine mixing in Pritchard, but I don't know if there's like a direct pivot there for me necessarily. I'd rather just play both than fade McBride.
I agree. And just looking at the minutes for the Knicks, I don't think this adds up to 240, does it? And so there's going to be some minutes to go around. I kind of think that the starters' minutes are all projected a little bit low, and they only have 3 players on the bench. I mean, if Jericho Sims is really only going to play 15 minutes, I saw the question about who do we think the Knicks reserve center is. I'm pretty sure it's got to be Jericho Sims. Precious Achiuwa's out for weeks. I mean, is Cat just going to play the entire game? Like, Cat can play the 4 next to Jericho Sims at times when OG or McHale go to the bench, but either way, the point is someone's here. Their minutes are projected a little bit low, so I really like the Knicks overall as a team today.
Yeah, totally agree. And it is kind of an interesting situation in that Boston doesn't necessarily need to run Cornette a bunch as a backup center, knowing that Sims is probably only going to play the minutes that Towns is off the floor. Um, but yeah, I mean, all of the starters here look amazing, and then McBride looks really good. If you want to mix in Sims, I think he's fine. Very risky though. We only have him for 15 minutes. Even if he plays 20, he's not generally a fantasy point per minute player. So maybe he gets you 10 to 15 fantasy points. On a two-gamer, that could be enough if you're getting to an extra stud, but it's tough for me to call him a priority. McBride certainly is. I'm a little bit lower than I think the field will be on OG, just because he's not always super involved on offense. And then on FanDuel, I'm definitely going to be lower than the field on Mikal Bridges. Those who remember us from last year know I'm a diehard Nets fan. We lost Bridges in the offseason. Pretty damn happy with that trade. That's a whole other conversation to have. But seeing him at 34%, I mean, this guy has not been making his threes in preseason. I'm sure he finds his stride at some point. I don't know that it's going to be tonight, though. So if I can get different just by not playing Bridges, I'm happy to do it. On DK, no one's playing him at all. That's 6,800, but I'm really not rushing to get to him as a way to get different. Love Hart, love Brunson, love Towns, probably in that order. If we're talking about kind of a big three, and then McBride, I almost put in a different category just because he's great value coming off the bench. But Bridges and OG, I'm kind of fine being a little bit lower on just because they're kind of defensive first type players.
I think I'm on the other side with you on Josh Hart. I see the 45% ownership, and his price is definitely really good, but I kind of
Yeah.
want to be under that. I actually like OG, and then like McHale. I mean, he's expensive, but I am going to play him just because he's a low-owned player who has done things in the NBA before. But Josh Hart, I think, is a guy I kind of want to get away from. There was a quote that just came out like 10 minutes before the stream started about he doesn't know what his role
I
is.
saw that.
They got to figure out, like, am I coming off the bench? And so I don't think they're going to change anything tonight, but maybe because it really kills Josh Hart's fantasy value when he's running with Mikhail, OG, Jalen, and Cat. And so
Yeah.
because when
I
he's
mean, no, not to cut you off, but I mean the same argument I'm kind of making in not playing Mikhail or OG. Like you could say the same exact thing for Josh Hart. He's not really an offensive player first. He does seem to get more rebounds than these other guys. Will that hang true with Cat now in the lineup? I don't know. So yeah, I mean, as one agrees somewhat. So I don't know. I think regardless, we're getting 35 to 38 minutes out of Josh Hart, which for me, sub 6K is enough to want to play him. But at the same time, I mean, if you're looking for ways to get different, obviously a guy who doesn't shoot the ball all that much probably makes some sense getting away from very heavy Josh Hart ownership.
And one thing I just want to mention, so Josh Hart did end his season on an injury, abdominal injury, if not mistaken, in the playoffs last year, but he was playing 48 minutes every game. And so there is some chance he gets 40 plus minutes tonight, just given how thin the bench is. And I feel like Josh Hart's the guy that Tibbs is just going to throw to the wolves and let just stay on the court, you know?
Yep, yep. I mean, yeah, OG, it's funny. I mean, obviously he's a great fit here when he's healthy, but there was this like quote that came out from him that he wasn't going to play unless he was 100%. Obviously, that doesn't go with like Tibbs' philosophy at all. But yeah, Hart's the guy they're going to run into the ground, and I think he's going to be comfortable doing it with Cat. Obviously, they have a history as well, but he may need to ease into that ridiculous 40 minutes per night type of situation that we're going to see from him. So I think Hart probably plays the most minutes here, followed by Brunson. Then probably Bridges and Cat, like as kind of a tier two. But Hart and Brunson definitely going to be running to the ground here. Um, but yeah, I mean, OG's healthy. You would think they need to get all they can out of him moving forward.
So maybe Justin, maybe you're asking who the backup center is behind Sims, and I guess the option is Huckporty, but this guy might not even see the court, and so I mean, if you're taking a
Yeah,
shot in like the largest DraftKings and FanDuel contests, ones with six figures to first, then maybe you play a few percent. But other than that, I wouldn't go there because Sims is already pretty deep as it is.
yeah, and I mean honestly, like I don't know, Tibbs isn't the type of guy to go really deep into his bench.
Yeah.
In Boston again with KP out, they are probably going to be able to play smaller than usual. Horford isn't a huge center anyway, so when Towns is off the floor, I mean we could see rotations where OG's technically at the five. Obviously, he's not a center, not playing center, but they don't need to go past Sims in terms of depth chart at center. I don't think, at least not in this matchup.
I mean, yeah, because if it's Huckporty for 5 minutes, they'll just run Cat an extra 5 minutes or Josh Hart an extra 5 minutes.
Yeah, Hart would be the. Who did I say? OG. Yeah, I think Hart would technically get some minutes down below the hoop, but yeah, I mean, you don't really need to dig that deep tonight.
And David S., how much effort should one make in trying to correlate players on the same team? And if correlating, do we look at positions or players for that correlation? The first thing I thought about is just making sure we don't have anti-correlation, like maybe playing Jericho Sims with Cat. If we're playing Sims, we're kind of hoping he gets more minutes. I don't see them sharing the court too much, so things like that. In terms of
Yeah.
regular correlation, go ahead, Nick.
No, I mean, I will say this: two game slates. There's a little bit more nuance than usual. Typically, yeah, you're not going to want to play the backup directly to a player because if the backup's having a huge game, it usually means the starter's in foul trouble or injured or something of the like. But I mean, this is kind of the general thought. So, like on these weird two-game slates, sometimes if you're playing a bunch of lineups, I think playing a Sims with the Towns wouldn't be an insane way to try to get a little bit different. Me personally, I'm not even getting too much Sims at all. But yeah, these two-game slates, like you almost have to think logically and then just kind of go against that logic at times. But yeah, as far as like other correlations go, I mean, there's no real direct correlations between any of these point guards and the guys they're passing to. I know early on in the NBA DFS, like 10, 15 years ago, people would talk about how like X point guard correlates well with whatever center. I think you more kind of look at it as game correlation now. Like we only have two games to choose from. They both have a 222 point total. But who's to say one plays really slow, one plays really fast? Like you're probably okay to go a little bit heavier on game stacks tonight than I would normally be comfortable with. Like tomorrow's what, a 10 game slate? Like I'm not even thinking of these things. But on a two gamer, again, looking for ways to get different. I mean, you got to kind of play these games out in your head. Say the Knicks and Celtics both play really good defense. That game barely gets to 200 points, and the late game goes off. Why not go super heavy on one or the other and just kind of hope one's a dud? But yeah, I mean, I'm with you, man. Like you're not playing the backup center with the center on most slates, but on a two gamer, I mean, nobody's going to want to do that. It's not the craziest thing to try to do something like that as a means to get different.
I was gonna say I'd be more comfortable doing it with like Rudy Gobert and Nas Reed or Julius Randle and Nas Reed,
Oh
something
yeah.
like that. But I'm glad you brought up that kind of super stacking idea because I wanted to mention this. If you've been watching the NFL videos, Jack and Brian had a
Mm.
really good one yesterday talking about the concept of super stacking, and it won. What was the winner? $6 and two Ravens or something, or whatever it was. Just they basically stacked one game and then only two players from the other game, and I think that's a pretty decent idea tonight. These are both kind of close spreads. The Boston game is a little bit wider at 6 points. The Lakers and Minnesota is only at 1 point. The total is exactly the same, basically. And so
Right.
there isn't a certain edge going to like the lower total or the lower spread or anything, but just playing more heavy on the game stacks, like Nick was saying, like three Lakers and three Minnesota guys with just a one off from the other team, something like that. And Huckporty ain't bad. He played in Germany. I didn't say he was bad, but if he's only getting 5 minutes in preseason, and I know Precious played that game, he played 15 minutes that game, but Tibbs has no history of going to rookies unless your name is Derek. Did he coach Derek Rose's rookie year?
I think he did.
But
I mean, yeah, there's been exceptions, but this is not going to be one of them, in my opinion.
so it's kind of just yeah, you're trying to get different. This is a player no one's going to play, but what are you hoping really happens? Just what's the path to him getting there? Because even if he plays 15 minutes, I mean, he could even at min price, he could easily not make the optimal lineup.
Right.
Uh,
And yeah, the coach is in mind. I mean, Thibs is one of these guys. Nick Nurse is another. They really don't like to run these deep rotations, even the regular season. It's more like playoff rotations, even the first game of the year. So even with this team banged up, like, I don't know. I think we're going to see like an 8, maybe 9 man rotation, like Toppin maybe gets a few minutes here, but like, I don't know. I think there's 8 guys you can kind of count on for minutes. And even campaign, I'm like, I don't really necessarily know that they're going to try to get him all that involved. This is not a team who likes to dig deep on their bench.
how many minutes for Hauser? Let's take a look. We have him projected for 21. He's only coming in at 8% ownership on DraftKings, 14 on FanDuel. These are both still really good ownerships on a two gamer. His price is good, so I would say Hauser is a pretty good high risk value.
Yeah, Hauser is about as boom or bust as it gets. Very
Mm-hmm.
scoring dependent, but he definitely has increased upside with Porzingis out. We've seen that historically. There's some rumblings too that maybe Horford doesn't get his full run of minutes. We have him for 28. Maybe he's capped around 24 or so. Obviously, just an old player, first game of the year. The Celtics, not the same philosophy as the Knicks. Like they're going to try to save their older players, kind of rotate guys in terms of rest, things like that. So maybe we do get extra run for some of these other guys. Hauser, though, low ownership, a guy we've seen spike a ceiling in the past, even if he's not starting. Don't mind getting to a little bit of him. And same deal with Pritchard, but Pritchard's drawing a ton of ownership. And to me, they're very similar players. Obviously, Pritchard probably more consistent of the two, but I mean, if no one's playing Hauser, like, yeah, it's almost the same play in my opinion. You're just getting him at forward instead of guard. So fine with it. Just know that you may end up with a single digit score out of him. But at the same time, on a 2 game slate where you're desperate for ways to get different, Sam Hauser is the type of play I'd be digging for on the bench. Someone who will probably be heavily involved. It's just a wide range of outcomes. So it's at least we have that range of outcomes. Like Huckporty, we don't even have a high ceiling. Hauser, we do. So maybe it fails, but I'd be willing to roll that dice a few times.
I like it. And who? Before I get to Unicorn Love from Minnesota, I feel like this is a joke that I'm not getting. But can we play Luis Scola tonight?
I think that's a joke. I don't know. Isn't he playing
Just
in Europe or retired or 45 years old? I don't
wondering
know.
if someone on the slate looks like Luis Scola, but I don't know. Let us know, Spaniard. Sorry, man, that one went right over my head. If that's a if that's a reference to something. But let's move on to Minnesota, and we have a questions about McDaniel's from Minnesota for 4,800 on FanDuel. I think he's a much better FanDuel play than he is on DraftKings. I actually didn't notice he was only 1% owned on DraftKings though, and while I do think he's one of the worst fantasy point per minute guys in the whole NBA, anyone at 1% who's starting projected to get 30 minutes on a two gamer, I'm gonna play.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of players with this archetype, like McDaniels. I mean, Matisse Thybulle when he's in the starting lineup. I mean, Batum we see at times. Back in the day, Ariza. It's like kind of this 3 and D guy, really good defender, going to get his minutes. But in terms of fantasy production, it's not always there. Can he get hot from three? It is a possibility, especially with the starting lineup where they're going to need some space here. Obviously, they have DiVincenzo and Alexander Walker coming off the bench, but with the starting unit, you got to kind of think. Edwards obviously can shoot some threes. Conley, not a high usage player. But McDaniels could be relied on for spacing a little bit more this season, so I actually think he has more upside than maybe he did last year. But yeah, I mean, am I rushing to get to him? Not necessarily. He's going to have to make a few threes to hit value. On FanDuel, I do agree he's a little bit better of a play where you're getting extra points for the blocks and the steals. But again, kind of like Hauser, just maybe not as risky, just a really wide range of outcomes. You're paying a little bit more for that as well. But again, 2 game slate, low ownership. I do think he's going to be kind of taking a few more threes than we saw from him last season. Will they go in or not? That's to be determined. But I don't hate him as a play. 5,300 is tough to click. But again, I mean, we're desperate for ways to get different on a 2 gamer. I don't think it's crazy. Again, I keep going back to Huck Porty. Now he's going to go off. But like, at least we know we're getting minutes with McDaniels. Even though he's not a great producer, he could fall into some luck here. Probably plays around 30 minutes. So that's enough for me to maybe take a few stabs, even on DK where he does feel overpriced.
So one thing I want to mention, if you're not familiar with the model, we don't use a traditional projection system here at Occupy. The OF index is kind of a score, and I don't know, the simplest way to think about it, and Brian, correct me if I'm wrong, but just kind of thinking about ceiling of these guys. And unlike the NFL model, this is not price sensitive. So the Occupy model thinks Carl Anthony Towns outscores everyone else tonight except for Anthony Davis, which I can't disagree with. I think that's fine, and it makes sense that he's higher owned. But one thing I want to point out is Jaden McDaniels is ranked so low in the model, and his DK value Where's DK value? Is not great
So,
either. Because we'll typically see some guys like this. Matisse Tybel is the one I'm thinking of, where he will, like, if we have him projected for 20 minutes, he's going to be at the top of DK value because we've seen that kind of explosive ceiling where he can hit a couple threes and get 5 or 6 stocks, and the model just doesn't think Jaden McDaniels has it. Now, I kind of think he got better over the summer because he looked really good in preseason, so maybe his role changes. But I just want to point out the model does not like Jaden McDaniels' ceiling opportunity tonight. And Spaniard was kidding about Luis Scola. Yeah. Good one.
got us to talk about Luis Scola, so kudos.
Anthony Edwards, I think, is. Excuse me.
Yes.
Can you tell us about Anthony Edwards tonight?
Yeah, man. So Edwards is interesting. Obviously, a little bit of a shakeup in the starting lineup. No more Cat. They do have Randall now. It's been a while since we've seen kind of a healthy Randall, so it's tough to know exactly what we're going to be getting out of him in terms of usage. But my first thought is Edwards is going to see more usage now with Randall in the lineup and with Cat out. Like we don't really have much of a sample of data to base that off of. But I think over time we're going to see that as favorable to Edwards. Against the Lakers, kind of similar to what we were talking about with the Celtics, like guards tend to fare better. It is a tough defensive matchup, but more so in the front court. But yeah, Edwards, somewhat inconsistent for a guy that we're paying almost 9K for. I do feel like LeBron and AD and probably even Tatum have higher floors here, certainly Brunson. But yeah, I mean, he's coming in lower owned than all these guys that I'm listing, so other than AD. So I think it does make sense to kind of mix him in. I'm fine getting to him here. Again, I think there's enough value on this slate where you could kind of fit two of these payups. I'm not going to call him a priority, but keep it on the ownership. I mean, FanDuel, where he's 43%, not as eager to get to him there. He's also more expensive over there, but on DK at just 22%, seems like no one's really playing him. If you don't want to kind of play the guessing game with the Celtics tonight, I'm fine getting to some Edwards. I mean, pair him with Brunson or one of the Lakers. I think you're building a pretty different lineup just from jump. So yeah, fine getting to Edwards. I do think he has a wider range of outcomes than a lot of the other payups, though. But again, I do think over the course of the season, we see him with more usage than he had alongside Cat with Randall now.
So Anthony Edwards is my favorite pay up tournament play today. He was already my favorite play before I saw the ownership, so this is not just ownership based, but what you said is definitely true. His floor is lower than everyone else's, but I think the ceiling is similar, if not
Yeah.
just the same as basically everyone else
Oh
on the
yeah.
slate. We're getting him at a discount. I think he's a phenomenal play tonight. I'm going to be double the field on DraftKings certainly, and then over on FanDuel, I get why he's 46%. I was getting more than this in my lineups too. Even though he's a little more expensive, it just the salary is a little bit easier to work with over there. And then
Yeah.
Julius at 7% is kind of tempting. I'm a little worried that he doesn't play more than 30 minutes. We have him projected for 31, but if he ends up playing like 36 minutes, he's going to look good. And even at the 31 minutes, he's still second on the OF index for this team. So
Yeah, I was surprised he's not a little bit more popular. And I mean, even with 30 minutes, like he's the type of guy who could get
mhm.
there. The FanDuel price at 7,700, only 24% owned. That's surprising to me, especially with not a lot of great center plays. Obviously, Randall's not a center, but I think we're going to talk about Nas Reed in a minute, who you could play at center or power forward. I'd be fine pairing them together. I think people are kind of hesitant, thinking that there's some super negative correlation there. I don't necessarily see it. Lakers, obviously, a big team. They're going to have to play big here. I think Randall, Reed, and Gobert could all get theirs. Even though it's a tough matchup, I mean, they're just a little bit cheaper than we generally see them. And yeah, I mean, Randall, definitely a bit of a wild card. First game with the new team here. Tough matchup against his former team. But yeah, I'm totally comfortable getting to him at this price. I thought he'd be more popular, at least on FanDuel. 24 to me seems low. And then we're looking at a 7 on DK. Definitely fine getting to some shares of him.
Yeah, I don't know that I'm going to pivot off of Cat to get to Randall that much, but it's just, I mean, it's a textbook leverage pivot. Cat's way owned and Randall isn't. I will say Randall played more minutes in the preseason game than I expected. I didn't think he was going to come in for the second half, but he looked fine. Yeah, I thought he looked great. He ended the season with an injury too, and I don't know, 7%. It's a really good tournament play today. Meanwhile, we have Gobert and Nas Reed for all the ownership. I think they're both appropriate. I think Gobert is great without Cat. I thought he was going to go a little overlooked today, but nope.
Yeah, Gobert looks good here. Obviously, just a little bit too cheap for what he's capable of doing. Not a great matchup. But yeah, I'm going to use this opportunity to kind of segue into Naz Reid. Everyone knows I'm a huge fan. Love LSU basketball. Always been high on Naz Reid. Now that he's going to get the increased minutes here, I know Randall's in, but Cat's out. And I mean, I don't know. I think Nas could even cut into some of the McDaniels minutes over the course of the season. We only have him for 23 minutes. To me, this seems low, if we're being honest. I think we could probably play 28. Even coming off the bench, I'm not really concerned. And we look at what he's been doing against this Lakers team, obviously a tough matchup. Dealing with small samples of data, take this all with a grain of salt. The last three games against the Lakers, going back to December of last year, 27 minutes, 21 points, 5 rebounds. He had 37 DK points, 44.8 DK points the game after that in March. And then in April, 35 minutes. I think Cat or Gobert were out this game, so can't put too much into it. But he had 56 DK points against the Lakers. So this is a guy who's done really well against this team. As good as AD is in the paint, I mean, Nas is just kind of slippery, and he kind of finds his spots against him. Really kind of a strange, nuanced matchup, but I love him here, even coming off the bench. The one kind of knock on him as a play is that the field is loving him too. He's about 50% owned on both sites, but you do have power forward and center eligibility on a slate where we're kind of lacking options at center. So Nas is one of my favorite plays tonight. Kind of similar to McBride. I think he's really good chalk. And I would bet the over on his minutes. I know we have him at 23.5, but I'm guessing we see 26 to 28. And if that were the case, I think he'd climb up the model. I don't knock the model at all for projecting him this way. This is what we've seen historically. But again, I think with Randall here, potentially capped around 30, and just kind of a different makeup in this starting lineup, I could see Reed kind of taking some of the McDaniels minutes, playing alongside Randall and Gobert even at times against a big team like the Lakers. I love him here, and historically he's done great in this matchup. So Reed, I mean, I'm not really breaking any new ground. He's one of the more popular plays on the slate, but I do just want to say that I think he's great chalk here, pushing 50%.
So I do love Nas Reed myself too, but I am going to push back a little bit. Lakers are not a big team. I don't think that there's any chance they go three across against us. I think Jaden McDaniels is pretty important for them tonight. But either way,
That's
even
fair.
at the 23 minutes, he's pretty good. I mean, he's an okay value score. 48%. The field loves him, but I think that's probably fine. I'll be at least at that. Will Garza
Yeah,
be
but
the? Oh, go ahead.
no, I was just going to say, I mean, how deep do you think this rotation goes? Because, I mean, you look at the bench, you got DiVincenzo, Reed. I know we have folks in the Discord asking about Alexander Walker as well. I think he's involved. But, like, are we going to see Ingles, Dillingham, Minot, Dozier? Like, are these guys even getting into the rotation? If they're not, I think the minutes just don't quite add up. I think we're going to have to see more Reed.
When I was projecting minutes earlier, I gave minutes to Minnow, but none of just like a couple minutes for the other guys. So Minnow, I think, was the guy, but it's between him or Garza, and so I was kind of deciding that. I decided to give him to Minnow, but we'll have to see there. Either of them could play less than 10 minutes anyway, with both Julius Gobert, or I guess all three of these guys healthy. Nasri too.
Right, right. And yeah, no, I'll take your counterpoint about them not going three big against the Lakers. I think you're right. The more I dig into that, but I mean, Rui James, AD, that's a pretty big lineup. McDaniel's defense definitely going to be relied on heavily, but again, I'm super interested in Naz Reid's minutes tonight because I think quickly we can start to see his projections come up consistently, and I think the whole industry is kind of here around 24 to 26 minutes. But definitely something to keep an eye on.
And will Luca Garza be the reserve center for Minnesota? I don't know. I'm gonna play Minnow over Garza tonight, only a few percent, but it's kind of up in the air. I think they both had pretty good preseasons.
Yeah, and here's the thing. I will say this. So, shouts out to you and Smitty for holding it down for preseason. I have not been in the weeds of NBA in preseason, and some ways that's a good thing, in some ways it's a bad thing. I know we like to fall in love with the guys that go off in the preseason, but at the same time, I could miss something that's kind of going down in the preseason. I'd just say take it all kind of with a grain of salt these first couple weeks. Maybe lighten your volume a little bit as we kind of figure out these minutes and rotations. Another thing with the Lakers, I mean, kind of segueing to the next team here, new coach with JJ Redick. What we've seen for rotations from them in the past could very quickly change. A lot of these situations are changing, not just on the rosters, but on the coaching staffs as well.
Yeah, and Just really quickly back to your point that you just made about preseason. To the people watching this, like, don't necessarily pay attention to who went off in the preseason. Pay attention to
Yeah.
opportunity, different situations, different rotations. Like one thing I forgot to point out with Minnesota, there was a game that Anthony Edwards took like 17 threes, and so the preseason is definitely the time to do things like that. Just shoot. But I do think that kind of adds to why I think Anthony Edwards has such a great ceiling case tonight. Is if he just comes out pulling and he's hitting, he's dropping 30 plus.
Oh yeah. Oh, I like it.
Is four players from one team too much tonight, FanDuel? No, it's a four-game slate. It's fine. Love, long as it's not the Knicks. Long as it's not the Knicks. Oh, Josh D is saying as long as you don't play four players from the Knicks. I don't.
I disagree.
Yeah, I disagree too. I think that's fine. I don't think there's any team you want to
The
float four
Knicks
players from tonight.
the Knicks play more yeah, if you're playing starters from the Knicks or McBride, I mean, you're getting all guys that play lots of minutes. So I'm almost most comfortable playing four players from the Knicks.
Yeah, that feels pretty good to me. So looking at the Lakers, we went over it a little bit, but Anthony Davis is coming in for decently low ownership, less than LeBron. He's a little more expensive. He's only center, so it takes away a little bit of flexibility. But I mean, I'm going to be over that 29% on DraftKings and even the 17% on FanDuel. We have enough value plays today.
Oh yeah, love AD. I mean, he's probably my favorite pay up, considering ownership. Really, really like him here. LeBron looks good. I mean, obviously a little bit more roster flexibility. You're getting mid forward, either forward position, a little bit cheaper than AD. The minutes will be there for him. And yeah, we. I don't want to talk about Bronny, but we have that whole narrative tonight as well that he's probably going to play the start of the second quarter. I don't know. Just don't play Bronny, but LeBron looks great. Reeves obviously getting a lot of ownership. I think he looks really good here. Going to be relied on as a spacer. But my question for you, as our resident Lakers fan, I mean, what are we doing with Rui now that he's starting super chalky? And Dalton Connect, talking about the preseason, a guy who's kind of flashed some upside. Will he be a regular part of this rotation? I think we have him for 16 minutes right now. To me, that seems fine. Obviously, not quite on the level of a McBride in terms of upside, but if you're looking to go stars and scrubs, to me, I mean, Rui and Connect are kind of next in line if we're looking for guys around 4K flat.
So the Lakers played a little bit deeper of a rotation in the preseason. This could be the rotation tonight. I don't think this adds up to 240 minutes either, just looking at it. But Dalton Connect for 16 minutes seems a little bit low. I'd like to project him closer to 20. Now, I'm just guessing. But to me, he's very, very clearly our best player off the bench, so I don't see why he wouldn't get up to
Yeah.
20 minutes. And I don't believe this 2%, 1% ownership at these prices either. Like, there's a few other really good value plays, very obvious, like McBride and Nas Reed. And so maybe it's even hard to fit Connect in. But at 2% and 1%, we got to take shots on this kid. He put up 50 during
Oh, yeah.
preseason. No one else did that off the bench, I don't think, for any team, right?
Right. I know. And if you're talking about playing a Sam Hauser, like Connect to me is like a similar play for cheaper at lower ownership with the same upside.
And
Like
he's going to
I
have
think
more
Hauser's
opportunity.
minutes are probably yeah, Hauser's minutes might be more secure, but Connect's going to be shooting a lot more. And we've seen games where Hauser plays 30 minutes and does nothing. I mean, Connect, I mean, he's there to shoot. Reddick's the coach. I mean, he's going to tell these guys to shoot. Kind of in his archetype, we got Connect, Reeves, etc. Very, very interested to see what this rotation looks like, but I think he's going to be a good value piece as long as he's priced as cheap.
Well, I just want to add on the great thing about Connect versus Sam Hauser is he does much more than just shoot. So even if he's having an
That's
off night, he could still hit value tonight at this price. Yes, so Rui on FanDuel, I think we just have to play right at 4,200. It just
yeah, that price is
it's
too
kind of
cheap.
it's
Simply
kind of
too.
dumb on DraftKings. I don't hate getting away from him. The debate that I was having earlier was, what am I doing with Reeves and D'Lo? I like Reeves more than D'Lo, so I'm probably going to be there a little bit more. But I want to be over the field.
These guys in the same lineup. I think on a two gamer though, maybe you could get the Reeves and Russell in lineups where you don't have one of AD or LeBron. They could both get there. I mean, a lot of history too. Not to dig into narratives too much with Russell and the Timberwolves. Uh, Russell, when he was in Minnesota, refused to pass to Gobert. They always like to show out against each other. Not that that necessarily really affects any projections or anything like that, but cheap enough. And I mean, not a great matchup in terms of defense, but we have seen him kind of spike ceilings at times. I think Reeves is much safer, but we're seeing that reflect in the ownership. Totally fine getting to both. And on a two-game slate where you're trying to get different, I don't think many people are going to be playing them in the same lineup. Something I'd be fine doing tonight. Usually not something I do on a bigger slate.
Yeah, back to the idea of just super stacking a game. Play AD, D'Lo, Reeves with run it back with Anthony Edwards and maybe even like or I guess Naz Reid would be the obvious one, and then just
Yeah.
that's already kind of different enough. You don't really have to consciously try to do too much else. We have a 2v2. We don't typically like answering 2v2s, but I'm just going to go with whatever the model says for this one. Ant and Rui or Braun and Pritchard. Fairly certain it's going to
And
be Ant
Rui
and
seems a
Rui.
lot safer, but
Yeah,
yeah.
Braun and Pritchard. Yeah, the model's going to answer the first one, Ant and Rui. All right, well, first dummy build of the season. Let's build a lineup. So, first player in tonight for you. Is it just Miles McBride?
Yeah, McBride, and then probably Reed, but yeah, McBride. The model likes McBride.
Let's put McBride at
Actually, no,
shooting
it doesn't.
guard. The model doesn't like
It's tricky with
McBride.
the value of the model first couple, but yeah, McBride to me is kind of a no-brainer.
Yeah, let the model get some data first here because McBride, I don't know. It's like the model doesn't like him, but he's 3,600 on DraftKings, 70%. I guess you could fade him if you think he doesn't play or play campaign over him, but it's such high risk in anything but the largest contests. I think you just play him. And
Oh, yeah, they love McBride there. Tibbs likes McBride a lot. I think he's the guy.
let's read it. Power forward. All right, now center. Do we want to do like AD and Towns?
I mean, Towns is like the cash play. Not that you're playing many cash games on a two-game slate necessarily. I think point per dollar, Towns is kind of a no-brainer. Can we fit AD with? I know you really like Edwards. I mean, I'd be interested to see if we could use those two as our pay-ups.
All right, let's try and do that.
AD and Edwards.
So Ann Edwards guard. So and typically when I'm like hand value, but we pointed out we like some guys a lot, so we're just gonna slide them in there and see what works here.
Yeah, see what we can fit.
Small forward. I mean, do we want to go with like a Dalton Connect, Kel Bridges, Anunoby? I don't think we can afford any of the real pay ups.
I'd go connect. I had a point per dollar. I'd rather take that risk.
Let's plug in Connect there. We might be able to get one more pay up. I mean, at point guard.
I mean, Brunson, I love. I think he's the safest.
Yeah, Brunson's pretty great. I don't mind playing Cat and Brunson in the same lineup since they're probably going to play high 30s minutes anyway.
Yep.
Leaves us
But if
6150
we
for
can't
two
get up
spots.
there,
No, we have plenty of
oh, what'd you
salary.
say? My bad.
We have plenty of salary left. Like we could even go Jason Tatum and then punt off with 3,300 on I guess Cam Reddish is on the Lakers. He probably plays 4 minutes tonight. Jericho Sims.
Yeah, I'm not crazy about Reddish. I don't know. Or if we don't go up to Tatum, I can't see your lineup screen, so it's a little bit tougher for me than usual. But I
Oh,
do like
weird.
Derek White at his price if we have a guard spot open, or Reeves.
Is Reeves small forward eligible? Nope. Let's
Is
throw
he?
Derek White in the util, and that leaves us 6K
Okay.
for a forward. Josh Hart,
Yeah,
Anunoby.
I like Hart. I think Hart's probably safer, but
There was a
um,
question: how much salary can be left on the table? Sorry, Zachary, missed that question. I mean, I would probably not leave more than 1,000 today.
yeah, NBA is different than like MLB or UFC or some of the other DFS sports in that it's super projectable. The salaries, while there are going to be some mispricings, most people are kind of capitalizing on those night to night. Two gamer, you could leave a little, but most nights it's tough to leave salary and still climb the leaderboard. So less so than other sports, are you going to be leaving salary on the table?
Yeah, like on tomorrow's 10 gamer, I'm
Oh
probably not
yeah,
leaving more than like 300 or maybe $400 in any
yeah,
lineup in my
if that.
150 set. I just said 1,000 bucks
Yeah,
because I mean it's one of the easy ways to get leverage tonight.
right. No, yeah, two gamer, I get it. And I will say this on the bigger slates, the one time I'm leaving salary on the table is like if you start off really poorly and you're just kind of pivoting to get off chalky plays on the late.
If like let's say you hit on the low owned guys in the first game, then just play more chalk from the second game. And so it's really important to do that because it's just I mean it's the biggest advantage in NBA DFS, I think. Sarah, is this a cash build, Courtney? No, it's not. It has Anthony Edwards and Dalton Connect, so this would definitely be a GPP build. Dalton Connect's projected for 2% ownership.
I'm guessing we see him closer to like 8, but yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
that's not really a cash play.
And is there anything else you want to talk about before we get out of here?
Let me just pull up lineups real quick. I mean, nothing glaring. Again, I'm really curious to see how many minutes we get out of Naz Reid tonight. He's popular already, but kind of across the industry, we're seeing 24. I'd be surprised if we don't see more. Same story with Dalton Connect, another guy I'm keeping an eye on. These first few weeks, again, is keep an eye on rotations, minutes, things like that. Horford looks great at his price, but don't be surprised if he were to be somewhat limited. I think it's going to be Cornette ahead of Tillman off the bench. That's something I need to keep an eye on. But these first few weeks, I mean, I'm playing. Like, I'm not going to say I'm not putting any volume out there, but you definitely want to keep an eye on these things. And if you could pick up on some of these rotational nuances before the rest of the field, that's where you're going to be making your money the first month or so. So, yeah, keep an eye on things. Two games that project to be really competitive. Definitely load up on either or in tournaments and hope one is a dud and the other goes off. But yeah, man, happy to be back. Really excited for the season.
It's going to be a great season. We hope you guys ride with us. I apologize for the technical difficulties. We're going to try and figure it out for the stream tomorrow. We're going to have one of these every day. It's usually going to be at around the same time, depending on when lock is. If you want a little bit more information, we got, I believe it's Jayhawk today in our Discord. There's information on how to join our Discord in the description below, but we do a Discord Q&A every day that we have a stream. It usually starts right after the stream. So hop in there, ask some questions, get another point of view from another one of our team members. And
Did we have an underdog plug as well? Yeah,
yeah,
the Boostober.
yeah, I just want to mention that they have an absolutely insane promotion going on right now where I still need to use my Brunson. I was putting in some season long bets
Nice.
earlier, but this is one of the best things I've ever seen in any pick'em. I've used it a bunch. Basically, 20% NBA boost on any entries that only have NBA stuff. It doesn't work for the season long. I already tried, but just an extra 20% on all your pick'ems. It's really, really good. I don't think we've posted any. I mean, I have a few that are open right now. If you guys want to just take, oh, I guess these are season long. Are these all season long? It's mostly season long stuff, but just pour through there. If you have any questions, pop in the chat. Maybe I'll try and have one ready for tomorrow to give to you guys. But yeah, 20% on Underdog. Always bringing us the best promotions in fantasy sports. So
Oh yeah.
appreciate you guys. Again, thank you for bearing with